There's an email that came through from Professor Bonke Dumisa. Professor Dumisa said from the University of KwaZulu-Natal. He says, Dr. Leon Louw and his Free Market Foundation are misleading the country on the matter of RDP houses without title. There are compelling reasons why the government cannot and should not give any transferable ownership title to recipient of RDP houses. It would be unconscionable of the government to provide freely transferable commercial products to some people at the expense of the taxpayers. This would actually promote corruption that already exists in the RDP housing sector. I do not know how Dr. Louw arrives at this marvelous figure of 50 billion rand that is allegedly lost to the country because RDP houses are not immediately transferable nor rental by the recipients thereof. These are the reasons why Dr. Louw's theory is found wanting in my view, says Professor Bonke Dumisa. RDP housing is solely meant to provide shelter to those people without any adequate financial means to afford building or buying their own houses. 2, these RDP houses are built using the taxes paid by less than 6 million heavily taxed South Africans who themselves struggle to service their bonds. 3, would it be fair then to expect the government to create this new class RDP house tradepreneurs who get these houses for free, sell or rent such houses to the very taxpayers whose taxes are used to finance such houses? Those are 3 factors that are raised by Professor Bonke Dumisa. We'll get responses in a minute from those, but also an email came through from Kabo Maitisa, who says, if what is being said about RDP houses not being registered with the deeds office is true, it may also be that some of the PPP government offices are not registered. I'm not sure about the PPP. Is it public-private partnership government offices are not registered? However, that is not a train smash. The new Board of Estate Agency Affairs Board, together with its new CEO to be appointed in due course, will have to establish an office of government housing within the board in order to regulate and control government housing as a whole and deal with it from that point. That's Kabo Maitisa, also another email that came through. There's also one that came through from Andy Muir. Andy says, regarding the discussion today on the forum at 8, I have thought a lot about this topic of issuing the title deeds to owners of houses delivered on RDP. There is a desperate need for land, and the cry is loud and clear. The issuing of title deeds to all property owners is vital, whether it be RDP or indeed an owner of any little shack in the township. People need to be empowered to enter the mainstream economy. What a good way of doing this. Overnight and at a stroke of a pen, millions of people will officially own their properties. Allow people to trade their properties now that now have value because they are title deed holders. This move will allow banks to enter the scene. Good or bad, the banks facilitate the flow of cash and people will be able to lend money to enhance their properties, etc. Yes, there will have to be taxes, checks and balances, and carefully thought out legislation, but we need to move forward on the land issue. Thanks. That's Andy Mew in Neisner. Right, these are the discussions then. Very interesting because these are the discussions that also you pick up on your very report about this matter, Mr. Leon Louw.
Yes, let's just understand this firstly, that the houses trade whether you like it or not. Some of the land audits have found that up to 80 or 90% of RDP houses, incidentally, my report is not about only RDP houses. Yes. It's about all land occupied by black people. Almost all black people still live as they did under apartheid on land they don't own and can't freely trade. My view is this is extraordinary. This is the Land Acts that are basically still with us. It's time we started treating blacks like whites. That's as simple as my position is. We should have the same in all areas, predominantly white or black. But the point is here that when somebody actually sells an RDP house, at the moment they can't give security to the buyer, so they get as little as 1/10 of the supposed market value of houses trading with full freehold title. And then the person buying it lives in permanent insecurity because they can and occasionally do get repossessed and evicted. So you have an underground economy happening anyway, whether you like it or not. There are probably not many places in South Africa where as many as 50% are actually occupied by the person who's supposed to be there. Let me give an example. One of the local governments in South Africa is working with us to try to become the first area in which all black occupied land has exactly the same title as white. In other words, to get rid of apartheid. And when the lawyers invited the people to come in and sign the documents to get for free at no cost, an asset worth maybe 200,000 or 300,000 rand. Not one person arrived, and when they went out to find out why, it's because they thought it was a trap. They thought people were going to find out that they have illegally let or sold their RDP house. They didn't trust the government. They thought they were being led into a trap where they would be repossessed. When eventually their confidence was gained, they have now come in and started signing, and they are actually getting titles. This will be the first local government in South Africa where all land ownership is normalized.
Let me find out from Mr. Cheney here, because you make such a startling opening remark here, Mr. Lowe, about the fact that black people still live exactly the same way they did under apartheid. They can't trade their land, whether people in the township, people in rural areas, tribal land, or RDP. Mr. Cheney, what is the view of the Human Settlements Department on those issues?
Kulani, I think we must just contextualize a number of things. One of the purposes of the housing program, which was commenced in 1994, was to, a couple of things. One, it was intended to provide and does provide tenure of security. It provides people with access to basic services. It also provides people with adequate housing. I think it's important to note, and I haven't seen the report of the Free Market Foundation, but the department, in conjunction with Finmark Trust, has undertaken a number of studies and research into particular, because we've identified titling as or the speeding up of titling as one of the issues. I think it's incorrect to say that people are not getting title and that people are living as they were in the apartheid times. No, this government, through its program, provides people with title. Yes, there are delays, and we are addressing those delays, particularly in relation to provision of title. But it's also incorrect to say that there's no intention to provide title. I think it's
titles where though? All right, let's break it down.
From the research that we have, due to delays, 67% of all subsidized housing that was provided post 94 has households have been provided with title. The balance of the 33%, we've identified a number of reasons why those delays are there, and together with the provinces and the respective municipalities, we are addressing those issues.
All right, but explain this to us. Okay, forget about the township, forget about the rural areas. We're going to come back to it now. But the RDP space, there are these conditions, preconditions that you can't sell before 8 years and so on. You say you're providing titles. Are you providing titles for those people as well?
I think Professor Bonke Dumisa's point is very important. We have a preemptive right in the title that gets issued, which basically says that if a person who receives a subsidized house wants to sell that, they must first offer that to the state, give the state an opportunity to then purchase that. If the state doesn't want to, then they have the ability to trade. That is what that preemptive right is. I think it's incorrect to assume that it's a prohibition on selling. No, it's not a prohibition on selling. It's a preemptive right.
All right, just explain that to us, Mr. Lowe, then.
For 8 years.
Because there seems to be different interpretations of the right, Mr. Lowe.
Yes, the right is correct. It's a preemptive right, meaning that you have to first offer it back to the government. But let me just make some important points here. This is not me being a government basher. The DA has the same policy, the IFP, whatever. So this is not about the government, and it's not me versus the Department of Human Settlements.
Yeah.
So I went to get that out of the way. This is actually hopefully a constructive discussion about how to deal with the real problem we face in South Africa. I went, for example, to one of the areas where there are many full titles, meaning titles without preemptive and other restrictive conditions. There's a whole range of restrictive conditions. I've also been to areas where the RDP housing or government subsidized housing has very peculiar titles, things called, for example, provisional certificates of leasehold, registered in the deeds registry, which are called title deeds. They have to be endorsed every 6 months, otherwise they lapse. I don't know if the department actually knows fully what's happening out there on the ground. It's a shambles. It's a breathtaking mess. And so you go to, for example, Langar. People, in theory, have title deeds, but they've never seen them. They've never been given them. You don't see for sale signs. You don't see to let signs. You don't have estate agents. There are no property columns in the newspapers. And properties are trading in the illegal underground economy. When you drive past a predominantly white area and you look at the land, pretty much 100% of that land is fully lawful. When you drive past a black area, probably well over half is in some sense unlawful. In other words, the person living there or the person buying and selling and letting is not done so lawfully. What we're hoping to do, and I'm sure the government wants, is to get full normalization where there is full lawful compliance, where the land in black, occupied by black people, is properly lawfully occupied. I would like to say fully freely owned, fully freely tradable. Now, these preemptive clauses, for example, we must understand, Professor Dumisa talks about buyers. Yes, every time there's a seller, there's a buyer. We should celebrate that fact. Here's somebody willing and able to invest in and maintain a home. The seller obviously has some other need. For example, they have to move to somewhere where they can get a job. The preemptive clauses, which people don't realize is a right of first refusal. Everyone thinks it's a prohibition on sale. So there's an education issue there.
Let me bring you in, Josette, because you've done some work in this area in relation to New Crossroads. Tell me a little bit what you found.
Sure. When you get onto this topic, one doesn't quite know where to begin. I mean, I've been working on trying to resolve with local people their conundrums around title deed and ownership and property and so on since 2003. So there are no simple solutions, and the solutions come because would emerge, I think, if you actually had people all agreeing that it's a priority and working on the issue together.
But sorry to interrupt you, Josette, because if you talk about conundrums, explain that to us. What are the issues?
Okay, so the issue is this. In New Crossroads, so I'm not talking about RDP housing, I'm going back even further than RDP housing. The problem goes way back to the areas that in 96 were offered the option of transferring their property to get title deeds from state-owned housing. And in 96, when that happened in New Crossroads, the process was uneven. Some people came forward and got what they thought was a right and some kind of ownership. Other people didn't do it at the time. So you have some people in New Crossroads who got some kind of paper and some people who never did. So you got some renters and some owners. When we went in and tried to figure out what was going on, it turned out that the piece of paper people had was different. Some people were given a leasehold, a grant of leasehold, which was issued in terms of a 1984 piece of legislation. Some people were given another type of title or a leasehold, which was in terms of a 1991 piece of legislation. And in trying to And the issue came to a head when most of the people who came to ask me to assist were coming because they were now in their 60s. And they were worrying not so much about there's an economic basis to it, but at the heart of it is also a concern that whatever people had, they could be able to pass on to their families. And of course they couldn't, because whatever they had wasn't a full title. And the issue is really trying to resolve it. We've been through 2 mayors in Cape Town, Noma Indiam Faketu, Helen Ziller, so different administrations, whether it was the ANC, whether it's the DA, you hit a brick wall, because in the end you have to have the deeds office, which is national, the provincial government, housing department, and the city, all sitting around the table trying to find a solution. And there is no solution up